Well, hello once again, friends. Merry 8th day of Christmas and Happy New Year's Day. It's good to be with you again as we continue our 12 days of Christmas devotional journey. Actually, it's 12 days plus. We're going to look at Epiphany as well, and that puts us smack dab in the middle of the journey. If you haven't started yet, it's not too late to start. Go ahead and start the new year by going on this adventure with us. You can go to littlehills.church/devotional and download it right now. As I think about this new year and I think about where we've been so far looking at aspects of spiritual fruit and how God gives us those gifts and how that pours out of Christmas and so on, and then where we're going on this journey, I came to Galatians 6:9, and it feels like it's a verse that I think speaks to what God calls us to in a new year. Paul writes, "And let us not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up." If you think about what we've been talking about, the different things that God calls us to do, that he brings out of our lives through his Spirit, that we've looked at so far, we can grow weary of doing them. We can also grow weary of all the outflowing of it that we're going to look at. But what do we keep doing? We keep looking at Jesus. We keep looking at what he has done. And as we remember that, and that's why we keep coming back to that with each of the gifts, we talk about how Jesus lived out the things that God's calling us to do, that God himself knows what it's like to do them, so that we don't grow weary, that we're not just doing it on our own and we're not doing something that God wouldn't do himself, but rather God does it for us each and every day. If you think about those first three aspects we looked at, if we think about love and joy and peace, what are they? They are aspects that are the engine. They drive what we do. They enable us to do everything else. And now we're right in the middle in these gifts that enable us to actually show love and joy and peace. I think about faithfulness and gentleness that we talked about last night in the sermon, or we're looking at yesterday and today in the devotional guide. Those are so essential to actually show something like God's love. If we're not being faithful and we're not being gentle, we're not going to show it. And likewise, tomorrow we'll look at self-control. These core things right in the middle help us to not grow weary, because if we're doing these things, God can show what's happening in the overall scheme of redemption by what's happening in us. And so it's essential that we don't grow weary on these things, and it's essential that in this new year we say to God, please help me, Lord. Help me to keep in mind that these are essential things I need to be doing. We often forget the essentials. We think, well, I'm going to hold on to this one aspect. I'm going to hold on to, like we talked about last night, gentleness or faithfulness, and drop the other. But we miss the overall picture. I read a few weeks ago about a man named Yosef, a Bedouin, who on the day that Israel was attacked, October 7th, he had a minibus that he used to taxi people. He immediately went and found people that were fleeing the terrorists, and he started to rescue them. Now, the Bedouins and the Israelis have been fighting for years. They don't normally get along. But as he saw innocent civilians running for their lives, he said the only thing that struck him was that they were human beings. He remembered the essential. And he didn't think about all the times they'd fought or the times there'd been arguments over who could use what land or anything like that. He just saw people in need, and he went and he helped them. He kept to the essentials. Now, we could do an awful lot of showing what God's love calls us to do by simply modeling that same care for other people. But I think it also speaks to how we do that. And these aspects like gentleness and faithfulness and self-control all speak to the essentials we need to hold on to. When we get too focused on the debates and the land we can use and can't use and who we get along with and who we don't, we forget to do the things that God simply called us to do that show love to others. It comes down to living like Jesus. That's what we're called to do in this new year. That's my prayer for all of us in this new year, that we can simply live like Jesus, that I can live like Jesus. It's so hard when we try to do it on our own. But when we hold on to what he's called us to do, and most importantly, go back to that engine, those truths that we've been talking about, like God's love, and we hold on to that. We hold on to the fact that the Spirit's the one that's going to do this in us. We're enabled to do it. So at this halfway point, I just want to leave us with 3 questions for the new year. First, where am I struggling to be faithful? We're talking about faithfulness over these few days. Where am I struggling to be faithful? You don't have to put it in the comments. You can if you'd like, but that's really just a question for us to ponder. Where are those places where doubt creeps in, where holding on to the truth is a struggle for me? Where can I ask God, strengthen me on that essential so I don't lose that, I don't get distracted? Then, secondly, where do I struggle to be gentle? That's our subject for today's reading. Gentleness. Where, Lord, have I not been gentle in this past year towards others? And how can I remember your gentleness and reflect it better in the new year? Finally, third, where, as we're going to talk about self-control tomorrow, where do I need to restrain myself? Where are those places where I'm not controlling myself well? And how can I be better at it in the new year? Again, not by our own strength, but back to that engine of God's love. As we do these things, it challenges us, but enables us by God's grace to show his love in the new year. Tonight on Steadfast, Jim is going to challenge us further to think about why we do things. So I encourage you, please do tune in at 7 p.m. And then immediately following Steadfast, you'll be able to catch the New Year's Eve prayer vigil that we had last night. If you weren't able to be a part of it, or maybe you just want to go through it again, it will air immediately after Steadfast. So I can't wait to join all of you for both of those parts of our continued New Year's Day celebration. Happy New Year and Merry, Merry Christmas.